Hey, what's up, everybody? We're in week number 2 of a new series that we're doing called Love. Now, to put everything in perspective, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been forgiven for something that you can remember clearly? Can you ever think of a moment where you've been forgiven? I know for me, I was very young and I was in the backyard playing with some of my older brothers. I have 4 older brothers, and we were all playing in the backyard. And my older brother, he was sitting on the fence. He was just sitting on the fence having a great day. And I thought, this was a great opportunity to run full speed at him and kind of just knock him off of the fence. I thought that, we were kind of horseplaying before, so I thought like this would be a great opportunity. So I run full speed, knock him right off of the fence, and I am like, man, that was so funny until I realized my brother didn't get back up. Like, he's literally on the ground and he is in excruciating pain. I purposely knocked my brother off the fence and he broke his arm. And you can imagine probably how I felt in that moment. Like, I was heartbroken, and because obviously my brother, he's hurting. So not only is he going to tell our parents, but I'm going to get in trouble for this, because I knew exactly what I was doing. And so I just felt really, really bad. So he goes in and finds out he has to go to the hospital and all the things. And I'm just waiting for this moment where I'm going to be put on punishment, where I'm just going to get in some real big trouble. But he comes home from the hospital, and my parents look at me and say, "Aaron, it's okay. Everything's going to be all right." And then I go to my brother and I'm like, "Hey, man, is everything okay?" And he's like, "Hey, man, everything's going to be all right. I forgive you." And in that moment, it was just a huge relief, because I was clearly in the wrong, but forgiveness, and I felt like in that moment, solved all of my problems. And here's my point. I think, especially in the context of what we're talking about these couple of weeks, that there is a very strong connection between what love is and forgiveness. There's a big connection between love and forgiveness. And if you think about it, and maybe you think about, your own memory of when you were forgiven, here's what we all can come to the conclusion of, is that at some point in our lives, we all need forgiveness from time to time. Whether it's a small thing or especially if it's a big thing, we all need forgiveness. We all want to experience forgiveness. And over the next couple of weeks, we're talking about this idea of forgiveness, but really we could define forgiveness as love. Forgiveness is one of the greatest expressions of love. Now, I will say that, it's one thing to say that, but it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different thing to live that out, to actually forgive. And when we look at the life of Jesus, or maybe even what we believe about God, we know that this is something that we should do. We know that this is something that should be a part of our lives. And I'm going to guess that you're a person that believes that something like love and forgiveness is something that can change the world or make the world better. And if that's the case, then loving people is what we should be doing every single day. But let's just be real honest. Loving people is one thing, and sometimes it feels like forgiving people is something that is completely different. So here's the tension that you're probably feeling right now. If love is one thing and forgiveness is one of the greatest expressions of love, and you and I want to be loving people, then that means that we have to find a way to make forgiveness a regular part of our lives. We've got to find a way to make forgiveness, or to forgive, as often as forgiveness is needed. So with that being said, here's a question that you're probably thinking. This is a question that I'm thinking based on what we've learned already. Is there a love that's so great that it can find a way to express forgiveness for anything? Is there a love that's so big, so great that forgiveness can be available to any situation and to any person? Now, when we think about the Bible and we read the Bible, there's some people that were really close to Jesus. One of those persons was Peter. And Peter, being one of the disciples of Jesus, was with Jesus all the way to the very end, which means that he saw Jesus being crucified on the cross. Now, Peter went on to write some encouraging words for Christians and believers and those that would place their faith in Jesus. And one of the things that Peter said in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8 is this. Notice, he says, love covers a multitude of sin. Most of all, continue to show deep love for each other because love covers a multitude of sin. Here it is, Peter, a disciple of Jesus, one who walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus. He understood the power of forgiveness. And he understood that forgiveness is expressed through a heart and a mind and a soul that is full of love. Now, here's what's interesting about Peter, though. Peter was there when Jesus was on the cross being crucified. Now, a lot of times we think about what Jesus did when he was on the cross, but I kind of imagine how Peter might have felt. Because the reality is that they killed Jesus on the cross and Jesus went to heaven. But Peter still had to live with those people. And so what was his heart towards those people? Was Peter a person who forgave the Roman soldiers and the Jewish leaders who actually put Jesus, his closest friend, on the cross? That's just something that I've been thinking about all this time. But I want to look at the crucifixion story. Luke, who was another follower of Jesus, he writes about this account. Luke chapter 23, we see exactly what Peter saw. We get a chance to feel exactly what Peter felt. Here's what Luke writes about what happened when Jesus was on the cross. Luke chapter 23, verse 32 and 34. 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. Now, I just want you to see what I just saw, hear what I just heard. I want you to read what I just read. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Jesus is on the cross being crucified with 2 other criminals, and the first words that comes out of Jesus' mouth is, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." I don't know about you, but man, that is powerful forgiveness. As a matter of fact, that is love to the maximum degree. And Jesus, in his weakest moment in life, was able to still express love even when he was about to lose his life. This is a powerful story, and not only does it end there, but it continues. This happened, and so people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at them, the people that stood watching. Peter was one of those people, by the way. And here's what the ruler said: "Having saved others, let him save himself if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine, vinegar, and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the king of the Jews." There was a written notice, but then also one of the criminals who hung hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God? Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man," talking about Jesus, "has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Man, I don't know about you guys, but that is an amazing story. That is an amazing series of events. And really, if I could just be honest, that's love. That is the greatest form of love. Not only was the rulers of the Jews against Jesus and hurled insults at him. The Roman soldiers were also there, and they talked about Jesus. And to make matters even worse, the criminal on the cross who actually deserved to be there, he even insulted Christ. And through all of those things, the first words that Jesus says is, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And the last thing that Jesus says was not a rebuttal or a response to how everybody treated them, but it was a response of forgiveness. He said, this day you will be with me in paradise, talking about one of the criminals. Now, to me, that is extremely powerful, but at the same time, it shows us the connection between what love is and what forgiveness is. Now, I just want you to put yourself in Jesus' shoes and imaginative just for a moment. And I just want you, how would you respond if you were Jesus? I mean, how would you respond if these people were treating you this way? I mean, I'm going to just be honest. I mean, I'm just a guy, and I don't know if I would have responded the same way. And I felt for Peter because I don't know how he felt about responding to these individuals. But what we do know is that Jesus, he chose to forgive. He chose the thing that would actually make the biggest difference. He chose the thing that would make the biggest difference, not only in his life, but also in the life of every single person involved. So what does that mean for you and I? What does that mean for us today? What does that mean for how we live out our lives from this day forward? Here's what it means. Love shows up in the low points of life. It's one thing to practice forgiveness when you're fully healthy and when everything is going well, but it's a completely different thing to practice forgiveness and to show forgiveness in your weakest moment of life. And the reason why we love Jesus and follow Jesus is, one, because he sacrificed for us. But then two, he also gave us an incredible example of how we all can live our lives. And so what does love require of you? We should live like God is always, or his love is always available to us. We should live our lives in a way that God, as if God's love is always available to us. And the beauty of the matter is that it is. The beauty of the matter is that it is. So here's a question that I want you to think about as we get ready to wrap up here and have some meaningful conversations. Here's the question. How can you tell when you have actually forgiven someone? How do you know when you've actually forgiven a person? Now, I know for some of you, because of the experiences that you've had and the people that have hurt you and the things that you had to go through, it may take a few extra steps in your forgiveness. And it may take you to create some really healthy boundaries so that you don't continue to get hurt, especially if you've ever been hurt physically, if you've ever been hurt emotionally and mentally deeply. We know that there are some extra steps, and it requires maybe involving a trusted adult, and it may be involving a few extra resources. I truly do understand that. But our heart today is to see the greatest love that has ever been shown, and that's through the life of Jesus Christ. In his weakest moment, he was able to express love, and we see love now as forgiveness. There's a great connection between the two. And so as we live our lives, we can also love and forgive. God, thank you today for this reminder of what true love really is. And as we celebrate this season of our lives and of what Christ has done for us from many different perspectives, help us to always remember that we can live this out in our lives because love shows up even in the low points of life. In Jesus' name, amen.